Hello, folks. It's been a hot sec since I hopped on the mic to deliver sweet blessings to your eyes and ears, but here I am. So, I was thinking, it's hard to produce soy these days, but we all need it in our diet to maintain our Antifa political leanings and our computer science degrees. Hence, today I'm going to be recommending y'all 5 leftist or left-ish books to keep your diet healthy. Straight from the Democrat Shadow Cabal. Let's get cooking. First up on the list, we have probably the least political book we're going to be discussing today, Chinglish, an almost entirely true story by Sue Chung. This is what I think is a pretty obscure book written for British middle schoolers, so don't beat yourself up if you've never heard of it. This book is about a British Chinese girl named Jo as she struggles with racism and forming her own bicultural identity without the support of her abusive parents and anyone else in her family, really. Obviously, she deals with a lot of racism at school, but also loneliness, depression, and some suicidality. She can barely communicate to either of her parents. Her brother and sister are off doing their own thing, and her cousins are in a completely different universe. Other than all that depressing stuff, Jo also deals with normal-ish teenage experience. Weird pets, potentially gay boyfriends, best friends running off to be with shy goth guys. It happens. Fortunately, the book concludes with Jo being able to escape from the personal hell that she'd been living in. That's all the details you're gonna get from me. This book made me cry. Next up, we're swerving away from that last book pretty hard as we have the raunchiest book on our list, The Pervert by Michelle Perez, illustrated by Remy Boydell. This book follows a mostly unnamed trans femme snacks worker living in Seattle as she navigates poverty, harassment, relationships, and her clients. Interestingly, the book is a non-linear narrative, instead taking place over a series of short vignettes told from our main character's point of view. This book touches on the violence that lower-income trans people have to face, both systemically in being stuck at shitty factory jobs full of disgusting transphobic guys and having to do sex work but not being able to afford a square meal per day, and in a literal sense in having to physically fight random guys on the street and clients that start hitting you. I think it also explores, isolation and lack of vulnerability. We as readers really don't know much about the main character. Heck, we don't even get to know her name until she decides to tell it to someone else. Our main character is so guarded that in her time of need, she calls up this guy that she's kind of acquainted with, simply because of the fact that he knows barely anything about her. And I don't know if this makes sense, but the best way I can describe this story is that it's really more of a feeling. A feeling that trans people all over the world will be facing more and more often in these coming days, especially with all the laws that are being passed. It's dark, it's scary at some points, it does not get better. Oh, also, the art was done by the One Trait Danger person, which I love. Yeah, okay, it's a new day, I'm in a new shirt, let's not talk about it. The next book on the list is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. I refuse to shut up about this book. I'm actually obsessed. I've been trying to convince my school librarian to put in an order for it for next year. You know all those YA dystopias that you probably grew up reading? Like the Hunger Games or the Divergent series? Imagine them, but trans, queer, leftist, and an examination of religious trauma. Hell Followed With Us is basically about this silly little trans boy named Benji who's trying to escape from a far-right Christian fundamentalist group called New Nazareth. Okay, well, that's more so what their main city is called, but my point still stands. This group released an all-destroying bioweapon known as the Flood, like Noah's Flood, as in designed to wipe out a sinful world. In his escape, he finds a group of non-believing survivors in the Aixon LGBTQ Center, or ALC as it's called. A stronghold of queer youth taking care of each other, loving, laughing, and trying to make the best of worst times. But what the kids at the ALC don't know is that Benji is the son of the Mother Reverend of New Nazareth, which is kind of a big deal. What's more is that he's been injected with the cult's ultimate weapon, the Seraph, which is literally ripping him limb from limb, trying to tear him into a 6-winged beast, designed to cleanse the world for Christ's coming and help the Lord bring his flock to deliverance. I'm not even shitting you right now. If you're not already sold on these books, I'll say we also have all of these great things. Yeah. Next we have The White Tiger. It's actually entirely possible that you've heard of this book because I think it's one of the more popular ones that we're going to be talking about today. The White Tiger by Aravind Adiga is a book that examines the tension between the two parallel sides of India. Poor and rich, developed, underdeveloped, urban and rural. And, most importantly, the class that owns and the class that works. The book is framed as a letter to the then Prime Minister of China, Wen Jiabao, who is apparently visiting India to find out how to foster a more entrepreneurial entrepreneurial society in his own country. When the main character of the book, Balaram Halwai, finds out about Jiabao's visit and the purpose for it, he decides to write a letter explaining his entire life story up till that point to him. How he broke out of his cage and became a giga-chad entrepreneur. And it's definitely not pretty. You see, the letter recounts Balaram's journey from a little kid who was pulled out of school to work, to a driver for a big-shot rich guy in the city, to the owner of a successful taxi business. Thematically, the book is commentary about the oppressive class structures in India, how the upper class see the lower class as half-baked, but continue to perpetuate generational poverty, hence never really letting them reach full-cooked. Notably, Balaram compares the state of Indian society to a chicken coop, in that chickens at a chicken farm will see their chicken peers being cut up and eaten and all the chicken blood and gore everywhere, but still not try their very best to escape their situation, even though they know that they're probably next. Similarly, workers in India see how they and their peers are being treated, and do nothing to revolt, nothing to escape, nothing to break their chains. Additionally, my interpretation of the story sees that it serves as a critique on how even people who have enough class consciousness to realize the necessary measures required to break their condition can't or simply won't choose to enact systemic change. But that's a long story, and I'm not entirely sure people want to hear about it, so... Lastly, but definitely not least, we have An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, or that one time Hank Green wrote a book about a bisexual lady who becomes a viral influencer because of reasons. I'm not entirely sure how much I can tell you about this book without ruining some pretty major things, so I'll just read you the Goodreads synopsis. The Carls just appeared. Roaming through New York City at 3 a.m., 23-year-old April May stumbles across a giant sculpture, delighted by its appearance and craftsmanship. Like a 10-foot-tall transformer wearing a suit of samurai armor, April and her best friend Andy make a video with it, which Andy uploads to YouTube. The next day, April wakes up to a viral video and a new life. News quickly spreads that there are Carls in dozens of cities around the world, from Beijing to Buenos Aires. And April, as their first documentarian, finds herself at the center of an intense international media spotlight. Seizing the opportunity to make her mark on the world, April now has to deal with the consequences her new particular brand of fame has on her relationships, her safety, and her own identity. And all eyes are on April to figure out not just what the Carls are, but what they want from us. AART is a part of the Carls duology, and while the second book would also fit pretty nicely on this list, there's no way you can read the second one without reading the first, especially for the series like this. The entire series is an exploration of what it does to someone to be thrust into fame literally overnight, but also how individuals become part of larger communities, the alt-right, culture wars, big tech, and why they can totally suck balls sometimes, and the metaverse. The first book was released in 2018, the second book was released in 2020, so it was kind of scary reading it when I did last December, with everyone talking about, like, decentralization and the blockchain and everything. I wouldn't go so far as to call it prophetic in that sense, but it was certainly something. And with that, I am wrapping up my list of 5 SJW soy boy liberal cuck books to help you decentralize and overthrow Western civilization. I don't know. And if anyone is wondering why the long gap between my last video and this one, it's because Eid Mubarak, by the way, and then a depressive episode, and so I decided to do a silly little video instead of a angry, political-ish one, to kind of take the pressure off me to be serious, you know? I appreciate every single person that took their time to watch the last video and this video too. It really means the world. Like, comment, subscribe, all those good things, so that one day I can hope to actually buy and read all these books instead of borrowing them from the internet. But yeah, and as always, it's been a real displeasure.